Now, this is something you don't see every day. Well, one half of this equation you may see every day, the Nintendo NES, but over here we have the NES's Japanese counterpart, the Nintendo Family Computer. As you can see, it's quite different than the NES. Let's take a closer look and see if we can spot the key differences. I'm going to start here with the NES, the more familiar of the two systems in the US. We have a standard Nintendo NES controller gamepad, which plugs in to the front of the console. The unit itself has a door where you open the door and insert your game packs here, insert them in, press them down, close the door. On the front you have a power button and a reset button and an LED light. As we flip the unit around, we have a connection for an RF switch, our channel 3-4 selector. I'm sorry, there's the RF switch, channel 3-4 selector, and the power jack. And if we look at the one side, we have our AV RCA style jack cables. Not the cables, but the hookup where you hook the cables to, if you want a direct AV feed to your TV or VCR. Now, over here, there she is. The Family Computer by Nintendo, also known as the Famicom, which is short for Family Computer. As we can see, it's a whole heck of a lot smaller than the NES. Even though this came out in 1983 in Japan, this came out in 1985 in the US. Now let's get this gray beast out of the way and take a closer look at its Japanese counterpart. The cartridge accepting area is right there. No spring-loaded door, just a little dust flap. Let's close that, keep it nice and safe. This big slider button is our eject button, which gives this console the nickname Toaster, as you can see in a moment. We take our Famicom cartridge, slide it in the top, fits in nice and firm. When we're done playing, we do that to eject it. On the front we have a little pin port if you want to hook up an auxiliary controller, because the controllers are hardwired into the system. The controllers are similar to a Nintendo gamepad for the US. Same basic functions, just a slightly different look for controller 1, aside from being hardwired, and they don't give you very much of a cord. There are slots to accept the controllers for storage. If we look at controller number 2, you'll notice there is no start or select button, but a volume slider and a microphone. Very few games use the microphone feature. It had a voice recognition type feature for a few games. But on a game with a non-voice recognition feature, you can talk into the microphone and it'll play through your TV, which is kind of interesting. Here is your power switch. Now if you look, the NES in the US had an LED light that told you power was on. The Famicom just has some orange paint down there. Here's your reset button with some Japanese labeling to tell you what does what if you can't read the English on it. Now, as we look at the back of this thing, you'll notice there's your AC power adapter. And by the way, if you have a Nintendo NES and a Famicom, do not use the same power adapter. The US Nintendo uses 9 volts of AC current that it converts from your wall. The Japanese one uses 9 volts direct current that it converts from a Japanese wall, slightly different voltages also in the households. You have your TV game selector. You have your channel 1 and 2 switch on your RF, which is a little different in the US. If you hook up a Japanese Famicom up to a US TV, channel 2 is the equivalent of channel 95, I believe, and I'm not quite sure what channel 1 equates to in the US. And we have our RF switch. That is standardized. So there you have the basic differences between the Japanese Nintendo, otherwise known as the Family Computer or Famicom, and the US equivalent, the Nintendo Entertainment System. You need one of these if you want to play these funky looking carts. And you need one of these if you want to play some classics like Metal Gear, Top Gun, or Zelda. Your US Nintendo will not play this version of Mario Brothers. This version of Crisis Force, which I don't even believe was released in the US, and is an excellent game if you like those space scrolling shooters. Or Gradius 2, which I do not believe was released in the US either, but I could be wrong on that one. May have been released under a different name. So there you have the basic differences between the Nintendo NES and the Japanese Family Computer.